Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Lisa Conley at Child Care Resources, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon with this informational webinar about a new Kaleidoscope Play Learn Statewide Steering Committee that we're setting up. I'm so happy that there's a wide variety of folks that are involved in this webinar today, and I hope that you feel free to ask some questions or make comments along the way. And certainly if you have questions or some suggestions following the webinar, feel free to contact me as well too. So I will go ahead and unmute folks if I can figure out how to do that again. And then why don't you go ahead and mute yourselves on your end. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to unmute yourself on your end and ask questions. And you can also type questions or suggestions, comments in the question bar as well too. So feel free to go ahead and do that anytime during the webinar. And I'll also try to make some pauses too. So it gives you a little bit of time to think and to type. So first off, want to start with this proverb, which is attributed as an African proverb, but as we all know, that's a rather large continent. And there's some speculation whether or not it actually came from an African culture or not. But in any regards, some wise people came up with this proverb that really encapsulates the way that we have operated Kaleidoscope Play and Learn from the very, very beginning. And it is, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I believe those of you who have been with us from the very beginning can really see how this has worked so well for the program, but it's also the way that we work with families and with our groups in the community too. And that we really believe that collectively we have so much more to offer for each other, and that it will sustain us all as we move into the future. So just want to keep the spirit of that proverb in the back of our minds as we talk today. And before we go forward, let's go a little bit backwards so we can kind of see where we've come from and really appreciate where we have come from too. When we reflect back, we really look back to those very early days, like 2005, when some of the first germs of an idea about Play and Learn started, on through the present day. And there was really, for me, sort of a division in a time when we really were all about research and development of this program, up and through about 2010, when we were just trying all sorts of new things and ready to say yes to whatever possibilities there might be, to trying different practices in terms of facilitating groups or working with families. And we used that time to collectively learn what was working best for families, and then to really start to formulate what Kaleidoscope Play and Learn is all about. And that's when we moved more into the phase of replication and program enhancements. And all along the way, our network of community-based partners, schools, libraries, funders, other sorts of stakeholders have been involved in guiding and directing this work too. When we think about the 2006 launch in January, that was preceded my time by just a couple of months, but as I understand it, from that very beginning, United Way of King County was involved. There were several community-based organizations that were involved, that are still involved. Center for Human Services, Children's Home Society, Encompass, Chinese Information Service Center, as well as public health and some other folks that have been involved from the very beginning. And then community and our network of folks continue to help and support us in figuring out evaluation. Our pilot study helped to really co-wrote the guidelines, and as they evolved, helped us set up the the quality assurance practices like the quality self-assessment to help us develop the one-on-one training, and came up with the Kaleidoscope Play Learn name and all of the above. So we really want to honor the contributions of many, many folks in helping us to get to the point today where really when you look at 2016 in Washington State, we reached at least 5,360 adults, and that's probably 360 families, unduplicated across the state. So we came from rather humble, but ambitious and very heartfelt beginnings to the point where we are today. And the program has consistently grown, and here's some numbers for you that represent the numbers of affiliates that we have in King County, in Washington State, that's exclusive of King County, and then outside of Washington across the United States, and then also the number of groups. We've had our share of ups and downs in terms of the numbers, and a lot of that having to do with the funding that's been available for our community partners to do the groups, as well as funding for us here at Child Care Resources to really support and grow the program model too. But this is our current state of affairs. And I just wanted to give you a visual too about, oops, am I not sharing my screen? Sorry about that. Okay, now now I've got the slides up. Sorry, I'm so sorry. Okay, thank you for your comments about that. So if you want to catch up on what you missed in the PowerPoint slides, go ahead. There are handouts that are uploaded into GoTo, and you feel free to print those out, or if you can open them up from wherever you're joining in from, go ahead and do that too. But we're on board now. So here's a map of the United States. I just wanted to give you a visual of where we are at with groups. And I will say that today, just today, I was corresponding with people in Arizona and Wisconsin who are also interested in starting Kaleidoscope groups. And there are more folks in Oregon that are and North Carolina that are sort of just waiting in the wings pending funding and other things in their organizations. And then when we come to the state of Washington, here's where groups are currently located. We've got sort of smatterings throughout the state, and I will say that a lot of this growth has not necessarily been intentional on our part here at Child Care Resources. I will say that it has been intentional on the part of some of our community partners throughout the state of Washington, and you can kind of see where that's happening. There's clusters in Central Washington there, and that has a lot to do with Catholic Charities and their embracing of the Kaleidoscope model throughout their whole system of family supports and low-income housing. And they've really fostered the growth and development there, and work with local funders as well as their early learning regional coalitions to expand the programs. And then in the Olympia area, Child Care Action Council has also has been a champion for Kaleidoscope Play and Learn, and has been running groups within their own organization, but also through their early learning coalition and in partnership with First Steps up there in Port Angeles, have really championed Kaleidoscope Play and Learn. And I believe we'll be seeing quite a few more groups in that area, especially as that Northern Olympic Kitsap Peninsula Early Learning Coalition has taken on Kaleidoscope Play and Learn too. And then we can't ignore what's happening up there in the northwest region of our state with right up against that border there with Canada, with a couple of intrepid school districts a few years ago, Ferndale schools and Mount Baker schools, taking on and starting Kaleidoscope groups and really spreading the word there, again through their school district system, and through their early learning coalitions. And that area, the Northwest Early Learning Coalitions, again, have done some concerted effort to raise some money, raise interest in Kaleidoscope Play and Learn, and the groups are proliferating because of that. So again, there's that proverb that this is really taking that village and that whole group collective effort to move forward with the program. And as I mentioned, we haven't been as intentional about this growth. We've obviously let it grow, but we're at that point where we feel like we really need to have a statewide plan for rolling out Kaleidoscope Play and Learn across the state, working with various community partners in all the different regions of the state, and finding a way to sustain and increase the number of groups that we currently have. So this is the moment where we feel like we're at that crossroads where we need to bring in our partners and do some collective thinking and planning together, and hence the creation of a steering committee. And that's the group that we're hoping I don't hope, I know it will guide us in these efforts. And one thing that when I think about all of those disparate efforts that are happening across the state, there is a vision and intention that does connect us all. And I really do feel that it's very mission-based, that across the board, we all have a shared interest and a shared purpose in reaching families and who are not otherwise connected in early learning, and especially those furthest from opportunity, so that their children are supported, those families are supported, and the children are growing up to be healthy as well as prepared for kindergarten. And so I think for taking that vision, we really would love to see a statewide system of support for all of those families that are not in formal early learning programs or may not otherwise be connected with any other systems. And the one method that we have to support them is through Kaleidoscope Play and Learn groups. So what drives us, I think, is to imagine that all of those families have an opportunity to participate in Kaleidoscope Play and Learn within their cultural community, within their language community, as well as in their neighborhood or their town or wherever they happen to be. So that's sort of the glue that keeps us together, and the vision that I think will also drive this steering committee. We've got a long ways to go to cover the whole state, but you know what? We can make those small steps to get there. So for the purpose of the steering committee, we really see that there are at least three main purposes and for pulling together this group. The first is to further develop the Kaleidoscope Play and Learn model, and I feel like there are still places where we can continue to grow the model, not just in the number of groups, but in the depth of the model, in new partnerships, in new resources and training for facilitators, in new resources and training for organizations, in evaluation. There's still a lot to learn about the program and still a lot more that we can do to even improve the quality from where it is today. Then the second piece is to really plan for the program's statewide implementation and to think about what will it take to have groups across the state What kind of supports will those groups need to have? How can we have local experts and folks that can provide technical assistance and consultation on starting and running groups? And how, the last part is, how are we going to fund it all? So, and I think, again, that's a very shared interest across the board here in this state, and childcare resources is included in that. And we need to figure out a way that we can cultivate very local as well as regional and then statewide systems that will support financially the development of groups, of new groups, as well as to sustain existing groups in a way that pays the staff fairly and in a way that groups don't have to be completely scrimping and saving all the time. So we really are bound to that and know that we cannot expand without having a plan for financial sustainability as well as for program quality and expansion. Questions so far about this? Okay, I'll move along. So the role of the steering committee will really be to help us connect with resources and share their own resources in service to this vision and purpose. We really want the steering committee to be involved in building strategic direction, in providing some guidance and expertise of knowing again that collective wisdom and knowledge is going to put us much further and build us in a much more cohesive way than if we were to do it alone. Also, steering committee will help us to build have us connect with other partners, potential partners and resources as a complete statewide network, and then to do some advocacy too, because I believe that is going to be key to a lot of the work that we have to do. So some possible areas of focus that the steering committee will work on, and this is in no particular order, again, model development and enhancements. So that part about improving quality, are there other sort of lesson guides, training, other resources that need to be developed, other kinds of partnerships that we could bring to bear that support the implementation of groups. Helping us build that statewide implementation structure and plan of thinking through, how will we be doing trainings across the state and have those key folks located throughout the state to support community partners and starting groups. And then, of course, that financial sustainability analysis and plan, looking at evaluation and research. What else do we want to know about Kaleidoscope Play and Learn? What else would other stakeholders like to know about Kaleidoscope Play and Learn to help us make the case and to help us improve the program? And then, of course, advocacy and influence. And I think for me, if I were to decide on a couple of the priorities for right now, it would be to look at number 2 and number 3. Because there is, for number 3, I sense some urgency around financial sustainability for all groups across the state. I also sense there may be some upcoming opportunities that we want to poise ourselves for working with Department of Early Learning or other sort of state or even national funders to help us move along the way so that we can get to sustainability. And then number 2, the statewide implementation structure and plan. And this is really, a lot of this is coming from our community partners out there in other parts of the state where where there is like substantial growth that's going on, and feeling like we do need to we do need to figure out a way that not everybody has to send their folks to Seattle for their trainings, but how else can we support groups that are outside of that, in this King and Puget Sound area? So I feel like those two pieces probably have the most priority at this point, and woven in with advocacy and influence, because I think that will help us push towards that financial sustainability. I also believe, model development and evaluation research, those are also very important. And if we had unlimited resources, maybe we could do all five, but we'll have to see about that. So or let me go back to this, the possible focus areas, when I think about the work of the steering committee, it's really being able to dive deep into each of these areas and to give some really good thinking about what are the possibilities, opportunities, what's going to best serve families and this program and our community partners into the future. So that's going to be one of the big things that the steering committee helps us to do, is just to give their good thinking and good ideas about it. So when it comes to membership for the steering committee, we're thinking about a dozen or so people that are representatives of our various affiliate organizations, those organizations that are running Kaleidoscope Play and Learn groups currently, maybe even past ones or ones that are thinking about it. Certainly the representatives from early learning regional coalitions over the past couple of years, they have been some of the key drivers in expansion in different parts of the state. Other community partners that may not be directly running groups, but have so thoughtfully offered their support and their resources throughout the years, like library systems and public agencies, public health in different areas has been very kind, even some school districts as well. Funders, both public and private. Again, I think that's really key to get a funder perspective on the committee too, so that we can keep that perspective balanced and get immediate feedback from people that are in that funding world on what makes sense to other funders. And then certainly anybody else that may have a mutual commitment to the healthy development and school readiness of young children and those children's families. And we'll likely have representatives that are people that could represent multiple pieces of this. We also want to be very intentional, as always, so that we have some equitable representation from those communities farthest from opportunity. So again, families of color, immigrant and refugee families, families with low incomes, and to be representative of the total of Washington State. So we have some geographic equity too. The structure of the steering committee, and this is where a lot of folks have been asking me questions about it, and I really appreciate the questions. Structure is that we will, at Child Care Resources, just as we have done throughout the years with Kaleidoscope, we'll staff this steering committee, we'll convene it, we'll take care of sort of the background things, doing some of the research and communications and all of those, so that the steering committee can really focus on good thinking and recommendations and decision making. I would guess that we'll meet probably for this first year 6 times, and probably more rather than less as we build up the pattern of the steering committee and get to know each other. I think more frequency will be probably needed. And I'm imagining, and I'm not imagining, I'm planning that the first meeting will be in person, just so that we can really get to know each other as people. And I have a feeling that the first meeting will be probably a half-day meeting as well. so we can dig into the work and make some decisions and commitments very early on. And that way we can then continue to gather on web-based or through conference calls in more remote types of meetings. So I think you could anticipate that those web-based meetings will probably be no more than an hour and a half or so. Then we would have regular communications, updates, and opportunities for input within the steering committee, but also we'll be communicating with any other interested affiliates and other interested stakeholders that feel like they can't participate in the steering committee at this time too. So beyond just the meetings, we'll be in communication with folks too. And I can foresee that there may be some work groups that are very short term and very focused, or some kind of subcommittees that may be meeting outside of the full steering committee. So I know that we do want to look at fees for training fees and affiliation fees, and that may be a work group that just really over the course of a few months digs deep into that and comes up with some recommendations and suggestions to the steering committee. And in terms of member commitments, we would ask members that they participate in the scheduled meetings. I think that will be very important. Again, it's the collective thinking and the conversation that happens as part of it that really will drive the work of the steering committee and drive the outcomes and the output of the steering committee. And there will be probably some homework in between meetings, and provide feedback and information as requested between the meetings. Really would hope that folks could be able to commit to participate for at least a year. And because I feel like we've got a good amount of work for at least a year, and we don't want to lose some continuity. And really, another commitment is just this ability and desire to hold both your own local experience and perspective, while also thinking about how does this impact the program and community partners statewide. So we really want to hear, from the very, very grassroots perspectives, as well as thinking about how does this extrapolate to supporting the whole statewide system. And then members too, I see them as serving as a conduit of information and feedback and questions between those folks and those coalitions and organizations that they're in partnership locally, and communicating back and forth about what's up going on locally in their areas with the steering committee, and vice versa. And I was trying to calculate the number of hours that this may be. I'm thinking maybe it's probably a minimum of 30 hours over the course of a year. It may be a little bit more depending upon how hands-on some folks want to get into the work, if they want to be a part of a work group, or really doing a little bit more in the details. So that's my best guess in terms of a time commitment. And we'll work our best to try to plan the meetings, conference calls, webinars, whatever they may be, in a way that most people can participate. If you feel like you cannot participate at this point, but you still in the steering committee, but you still want to participate and have a say in the things the steering committee is working on, we really, really want to invite you to do that. So we will be sure to be sending out regular updates via email to all Washington affiliates and other stakeholders, what's going on with the steering committee, any minutes and agendas for upcoming meetings. Those will be out and available for you. We'll also be contacting everybody probably fairly regularly, or as questions come back where the steering committee feels like it needs more information and we'd like to hear directly from a broader base. We'll be asking for your feedback, suggestions, questions. And we want to make sure that all affiliates, whether or not you are part of the steering committee, you are welcome to attend and to hear and to offer your thinking and suggestions. And obviously, you're also always encouraged to contact Child Care Resources, and I will likely I am going to be the lead for the steering committee. So feel free to always contact me for questions, suggestions, concerns, anything that you feel would be useful to you or to us or to the greater steering committee. And then work groups too may be a way that if you feel like you can't participate in the steering committee, but there is a topic that we have an issue that there's a work group that is going to be meeting around, then feel free to jump in. And again, we'll be sending out notices when those opportunities arise. Questions? Thoughts? And then sometime in the future, maybe in the next year or so, we're working towards staffing capacity to do this, but we would like to have another statewide group that is meeting or at least working together somehow and calling it a statewide network and building upon the ideas that we had a King County network for a while that was much more focused on the practice of Kaleidoscope Play and Learn. So this network would be looking at what are some ways that we can share best practices among facilitators or organizations, some things that we can do right now to enhance groups and folks and their learning, and facilitators in their learning. Thinking about what are the lessons that we're still continuing to learn in working with families and implementing the program? Are there some innovative partnerships that we'd want to highlight and share with others across the state? And again, the membership of this would be open to all Kaleidoscope Play and Learn affiliates and really much more focused on the work that facilitators do, so inviting them. So we'll keep you apprised of when that may launch. So I got a question here about when the steering committee will kick off, and good timing for that question. We'll move right along into the timeline. So we hope to have the first meeting sometime before the end of January or the first part of February. Right now, we want to make sure we're getting information out to everybody that is part of our broader network and connections and partnerships, so that folks that are interested in being a part of the steering committee can make themselves known, and gives us a little bit of time to contact folks that we are hoping that would raise their hand. So we will hope to have our final membership, or at least a core of the members of the steering committee, known by about the 22nd of this month, so that we can start to arrange a day and a time that will work best for that group of folks to meet sometime late January, early February. And we'll continue to send out email updates with affiliates and other supporters about the progress of the steering committee and upcoming meetings, and again, asking for your feedback and all that. So that is our timeline. And in terms of the location of that first meeting, we'll also ask feedback from the folks that have agreed to be on the steering committee too, and try to come up with a location that works best for most everybody. But again, challenging when we're doing something in winter in the state of Washington, but we'll figure it out. Um, so that is, I think, all that I have about the steering committee. Again, really looking at it, thinking about it at high level, statewide, systems building, really working towards that long-term financial sustainability, implementation of a really quality program and expansion across the state so that more families have access to this program. And the other theme being we really want to have a lot of transparency about what's going on with it. So you'll be hearing regularly from us, and always, always, always feel free to contact me with questions or concerns, any suggestions you might have, or any suggestions you might have for folks to be on the steering committee as well, too. And I think just because we may have a core group of folks identified in November as being the steering committee, there we will be open to having folks join us in midstream too. We know those opportunities may arise that somebody is available and really energetic and enthusiastic and wants to be a part. So questions, thoughts, comments before we sign off? All right, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. So again, you know where to find me, and I'll be, we'll be sending out another email with a link to the recording of this webinar. So if you've got colleagues that weren't able to join and they didn't get an email of their own, feel free to send this on to them. And again, feel free to give me your feedback, ideas, and if you're ready to make a commitment to be a part of this, or you want to make sure that you are informed if there's a work group that has, on a topic that's especially important to you, just let me know anytime. So thanks so much, and hope you all have a good rest of the afternoon.